to move on from that terrible prediction and get to one of your good ones. So Marcel, the floor is yours to share with us your bold prediction.
Well, so my bold prediction, and I was wondering which one of the two I was going to go with. So I'm going to stick to my bread and butter. Okay, so I predict that the practice of servant leadership is going to really just evolve as sort of a go-to strategy for addressing employee engagement and really transforming organizations from the inside out. So, and the reason I say this, a little bit of context here, I think that during the height of the pandemic in 2020, you saw leaders become more sensitive to the needs of employees and even customers. People were suffering, and there was this immediate crisis, right? Talking about March, April, May, maybe even into the summer. So as a natural human instinct, leaders pivoted, right? They became better listeners. They showed up with more empathy, and they acted more compassionate. So this is consistent with, by my book, every crisis that I've ever seen that affects human beings. Good leaders rise up and provide stability, assurance, and hope, and all that good stuff, right? So what happens, though, is when the crisis wears off, many leaders revert back to where they were. In servant leadership, when a crisis tapers off, servant leaders don't revert back. So they've always been that way. It's in their DNA. So their mindset has always been one of taking care of their people, meeting their needs, providing avenues for growth and development, and giving them a purpose in their work, that gets people up in the morning. So that's, to me, the sustainability factor right there. That's what I predict is going to happen.
I like that. Leonor's clapping.
Well, yeah, I mean, I just couldn't agree more. And I had put in the chat earlier when someone asked what I'm seeing with Gen Z and what they want out of their workforce. It's purpose, it's values. I have yet to meet a student at Vanderbilt who's driven by money alone, and there were plenty in my class in college. So Marcel, what you're saying, I'm just seeing it all over the place right now. And so you get a rousing round of applause from me with nothing to add to the beautiful way that you phrased it.
What's interesting is that that second Menti poll, Matt, that you put up, you saw the slide that said shifting power from employer to employee, and this is the shift that we have been seeing really for the last 12 to 18 months. But the true litmus test is going to be who's going to stick to it.
Very true.
When it's a revealing, employees, that's one of the things that's really weird, is because employees have had the power. They just haven't exercised it, right? They have the tools to organize. They've had the power to do some of these things. And it's COVID was sort of a match that was dropped on a bunch of the dry brush on the ground and lit a fire. And so we're finally starting to see them, it's like we've had enough. And there's, some other things that have happened that have certainly accelerated it. And so I think it's right. So I said we're kind of, it feels like preaching the choir here a little bit, the three of us, with the alignment we have around the work that needs to be done or what's going to happen. Because I completely agree with Marcel about the shift in management and leadership, and that really, I think, just another way of it to shift is it's really become where managers and leaders are having to wake up. And this connects back, I think, to why I think some of the executives are going to bail out, is that the hard reality that it's not about you as a leader or manager. It never has been about you. It's about the people that you serve and their needs, and amplifying their ability to contribute and be their best. And that's hard work. It's much different work. And so I completely agree that's, I should say, I hope that you're right, because I think that's it's a needed change. And I think we all three all four of us have our shoulder behind trying to see that happen.
I think one of the challenges that I think that what's going to happen is that poor leaders will be exposed by the conditions that are coming. And when things are going well and the economy is doing well and businesses are doing well, then it's a little bit easier to be less artful and skilled as a leader. But I think in reality, what happened is you used to have leaders who were doing the types of things like creating psychological safety or acting as servant leaders, and they would sort of stand out. And you'd be like, wow, that person's really great. It's one of those more memorable reporting relationships I've ever had, whatever it might be. But now it's starting to cost us when leaders don't behave in the ways that we're talking about. So I think, for example, when we start to see leaders that can't create psychological safety in the old days, people would be frustrated. Well, now they're gone. And if you don't act like a servant leader, your organization begins to suffer because the projects you needed those people to do or the culture you need to create isn't going to retain people, or it's not going to make remote work the way that it's supposed to. So the stakes have been raised. And I think that while we're all in alignment about the role of people practices in the world of work, I hate to say it because I'm not a pessimist like you, Jason, either. I don't think that most leaders, the average executive, gets it. I think still to this day, there's a mentality that the technical aspects of a business are going to carry the day. And so my question for the panelists is, how do we, now that we've looked into our crystal ball, we've looked in the future, we all do this for a living, which is to try to turn up the volume on the people emphasis in a business. How does that change? Or what techniques are you thinking about going into 2022 to help consultants like those who are on the line really make sure that people make it to the top of the agenda and not the bottom of the agenda, time permitting, which there never seems to be the time to make them the priority?
I can jump in on that.
Please.
So my experience working with C-suite leaders, which is the majority of my client base, is that often they need data to be convinced about something. So as many of you pointed out, we're sort of drinking our own Kool-Aid here and believing in the importance of people and people initiatives. And I know many C-suite leaders who might believe those things or pay lip service to those things, who have trouble putting them into practice for whatever reason, whatever limiting beliefs they have. And I find that a really good way to overcome that is with data. So I mentioned the psychological safety scan, but there are others. There are employee engagement surveys, there are pulse checks, there are records of exit interviews. And it's very easy to ignore those data points if things are going well in your business. So I think one of the things that we can do as consultants, and we have a privileged position of speaking truth to power and doing what we do, that one of the things we need to do is help leaders be familiar with the data that actually is in their company. So, executive coach Marshall Goldsmith, who's probably known to many of you, starts his famous book, What Got You Here Won't Get You There, with the analogy that you're at the roadmap, you're in the mall and you have the sign that says you are here. You can't be anywhere other than where you are, but many leaders don't look around at the data to understand where they are. And so as consultants, we can help them do that.
Yeah, excuse me. I was about to cough, but it didn't come out. I think that, speaking of data, how obvious can it be then, drawing from 40 plus years of research by Gallup that shows that when employees' needs are met, and many of us have thrown the Q12, the Gallup Q12 at our clients, right? So all of those Q12 variables, setting clear goals and expectations for performance, giving people resources, having a best friend at work, all that stuff, right? So, and the well-being aspect these days is very important, mental health and well-being. So when all those things are addressed, all these things lead naturally to high employee engagement. And to me, here's the clincher, is the correlation is clear that when your employee experience is positive and high, your customer experience is going to be positive and high as well. Happy employees will always translate to happy customers. That's what I would draw on right there at the top of the mountain.
Like it.
I don't know. I have a lot. I don't think to add here, other than just to sort of echo, or I think maybe build on what Marcel just said, which is, even in 10 years as a corporate HR executive, one of the things I learned is that, and I'm seeing Jim's comments here in the chat, is that like I learned to, like he's right. Executives are largely self-interested, and they don't get it. And so how do we get it on their radar? Well, we got to talk about what we need to happen or what needs to happen in context of what they're interested. Like it's sort of a judo move or whatever. Like, let's use their interest. Let's use their, what do they care about? And let's find a way to connect what we do and what needs to be done organizationally or on the people level to what they care about. And so, I think over the years, what I realized is that so much of what needs to be done to solve the problems we're talking about today sound like things that the executives just don't care about, or not all executives, but a lot of them just don't. It doesn't feel like something that they should be caring about. And so when you can make it about organizational performance or profitability or customer retention, or maybe find a way to make solving our people challenges part of solving our supply chain issues that I see as a topic. You find a way to tie those together, man, because then you all of a sudden are relevant. You don't get ignored anymore because and so I just find it's easier to harness their self-interest and use it as opposed to trying to buck that tide.